So I'm talking in a mic specifically for the camera. I'm Sam. I manage this space. This is Area 31. Welcome. We're a multi-use space that we basically try to use it to foster the arts in town, especially film-based arts. So we show free movies every Monday as part of our Cine Monday series from the Janus Films collection. You can grab one of the orange pamphlets that's got our fall season in there. And then once a month, we also show first-run independent films that otherwise don't make it to Frederick. And November 11th, we're showing Blade of the Immortal, which is Takashi Miike's 100th film, samurai flick that looks awesome. He made a bunch of random movies like Ichi the Killer, Gozu, Visitor Q, and then also did 13 Assassins, which is, I think, the best modern samurai movie I've seen. Other than that, we're also working on our own feature film here, which is this film, Leda, that I've been working on for 4 years. And this kind of event that we're having tonight is pretty much perfectly in line with what we're trying to do here and what we're trying to bring to Frederick, to foster the arts and bring everyone together and try to inspire more creativity to happen. Also, first Saturdays, we have new art on the wall every month. So we're having analog photography group, I believe is what they're called, something like that, come in for next week for the first Saturday, and they'll have a bunch of different artists showing their film work, still film work, that is. So without further ado, welcome to Trailer Trash and our 8mm presentation and such. We're going to start with a little trailer that was originally from television, correct?
Craig Smith made the following bumper that you'll see for the Frederick Festival of Film in 2006. We did it when Trailer Trash was very early in its conception, but we had been approached about putting something together for the Frederick Film Festival, so we thought that was a good tie-in, so we'll use that bumper to start with.
Awesome. Well, I hope you all enjoy the show, and after this, it'll turn over to Craig and Don. Thanks for being here.
Good evening, everybody. And again, I'm speaking into the mic for the sake of the camera. We'd like to welcome you here tonight to the screening of this film, Trailer Trash. I'm so caught up in this moment right now. I want you to know, Don Ramirez, that I'm so honored to be here tonight at this 10th anniversary of the film. Our families have been interconnected for a long time. A lot of the pain and the different things that you'll see in this film, I experience with them. You know, this is my family, this is my tribe, part of my tribe, and I'm honored to be here tonight. And if you've never seen the film, you're in for an an amazing experience. I introduced this film a number of years ago at Shepherd University. And when I opened up, I welcomed people to the Caravanserai. And a Caravanserai is a place where travelers in the camel caravans, they would come together and they would camp at night. And when they would gather around this fire, they would tell one another stories. This is an incredible story tonight, and I don't want to take up a lot of your time. I just want to begin to introduce the speakers, because if I say too much, I'm going to give everything away. Welcome to this Caravanserai. I'll allow everybody else to tell the story. I'm glad I'm here at the fire tonight. Okay, we'd like to introduce Miss Becky Laughlin. Becky, welcome.
When I was asked to introduce Don tonight at this showing of Trailer Trash, I didn't hesitate a moment. I said, yes, right away, I want to do this. I've known Don for nearly 30 years, I think. And I first really got to know him when he was teaching the experimental film workshops at the Del Plain. But before that, I knew him as a photographer. And how he began as a photographer was actually back when he was a student at Shepherd College, which is now Shepherd University. And he got an associate degree in photography in 1990, along with his major in psychology. And in the year 1990, when he graduated, he had his photographs in the juried student exhibition, and he won Best of Show. So he was on his way. But also as a student, he began doing controversial activities, exhibiting, doing self-promoting exhibitions and multimedia experiences in unusual venues. I've seen clippings of when I think he found some abandoned house, painted bright colors on the walls, used it as a setting for photography. And then there was all this media, the press in West Virginia was accusing him of devil worship or Satanism. I mean, really. But he continued, though, as a professional photographer. He exhibited first professionally at the Corcoran School of Art in 1998, I believe. After that, he's had a string of exhibitions in really prestigious places at the, Maryland Art Place, at the Tart Gallery at DuPont Circle, at the Millennia Art Center in Northern Virginia, at Carroll Community College, at Frederick Community College on a couple instances. At the Weinberg Center, there he caused a little bit of a controversy by a photograph that he exhibited of a female restrained in a particular way that some local people found objectionable. And he is also shown at, did I say Maryland Art Place? I don't know if I repeated myself. His work has been reviewed by a critic from the Washington Post on 2 occasions. The first occasion in 2001, the critic wrote that his work is compelling, which is quite true. And then 2 years later, in 2003, he again praised Don's work and wrote something about Don being an artist character who led a debaucherous life. What, Don?
So he's talking about Blue Elephant. He said I had a photo journal that something that captured the legendary debauchery associated with Blue Elephant. Not me personally.
Oh, I thought. Okay, I stand corrected. Yeah, so Don was a founding member of the Blue Elephant, and he was very active in 5 years, exhibiting his own work and working on programming as well. One thing he did for the center is he brought more of an intellectual feeling to it. He approached, he had Shepherd University artists like Rhonda Smith exhibit her prints there, and so on. His films, the first films that I became familiar of his was more abstract. Like he did a film where he spray painted, I think it was 16 millimeter film, and had music accompanying it. It was just awesome. It was just fascinating. I couldn't believe it. Another piece he did, he filmed right here in Frederick in the street festivals. It was a stop animation of all the people walking, in different directions, and it was edited brilliantly. As I said at the beginning of my introduction, I really got to know Don when I was a student in both the beginning and the advanced experimental film making classes at the Delaplane. He was an extraordinary teacher, extremely energetic. He would go down every evening before the class to the Enoch Pratt Free Library in Baltimore and bring back original film versions. No video was allowed in these classes. Craig assisted him in this endeavor. He also brought in filmmakers like from UMBC, such as Kirsten Deandra Hollander, who showed their art projects sometimes as a working project, and talked about their inspiration and their technique as well. Don, as being involved in the Blue Elephant on at least one occasion, he brought Skiz to the Blue Elephant. Skiz still might be the director of the programming at the Maryland Film Festival.
He was program director for the Maryland Film Festival for years. In Baltimore, he's a legend.
Right. Yeah, and how he got known really was the Micro Sin Fest. There was an annual event, and he showed like the best of the Sin Fest at the Blue Elephant on a couple occasions. So in the workshops themselves, they were quite inspiration. We were all novices, we're all new to this, and it was Don was very inspiring and a really excellent teacher. He just shared his passion with us, and it was really amazing experience. Tonight you're going to see his full feature Trailer Trash documentary, which has won several awards, including an award at the Rosebud Film Festival in Virginia. So let's give a warm welcome to Don Ramirez. Very happy to introduce him tonight.
Craig's going to speak next.
I usually don't speak, so anyway. Don, the first time I met Don, I was at UMBC, and I was kind of enjoying being an anonymous guy there. And I was sitting out waiting for him to open the film cage, and Don came. Don was sitting there as well, and he was flipping through this book of art that he had put together, photo collage stuff. And it was pretty provocative, and we struck up a conversation, and it turned out we're both from West Virginia, and so we started talking more. And we knew some of the same people, a couple of the same people, which was interesting. Then he came with me to see a Super 8 event at the Biograph Theater in Washington, D.C. And the films were shown off Super 8 film with a Super 8 projector. And that's when he got really excited about Super 8, because he saw that it was a pretty viable medium. He always thought of Super 8 as a very degraded, and that was because he'd never seen it projected, lit well and in focus and projected off the film. So he found out I knew a lot about Super 8, so he just started picking my brain and picking my brain and picking my brain, and borrowing all the books I had, and eventually making his own Super 8 films. And as you can see here, he's amassed this archive of Super 8 stuff. And there's a lot of information there. The cameras are really cool. And then he got into making this film. And he asked me if I would help edit it. And I was just like, well, I do live in Baltimore and you live in Frederick. And he was like, yeah. But anyway, he got me to cut this trailer that you just watched. And I haven't seen that in 10 years or 8 years or so, and I forgot how heavy it was. It's I was used to seeing it then because I was looking at it and looking at it and looking at it. But yeah, it's an interesting film, and I helped him with the experimental film classes. And I remember one of Becky's films. She used black and white Super 8 film stock, and she wrapped a woman in like Christmas lights. Just white Christmas lights, and it was really surreal. But anyway, this is a really interesting film. He won the Super 8 National Film Festival for Best Documentary when he released it, and and this is a really cool place. This is really interesting, And seems like the perfect place for Don to have his little 10-year screening of this particular film. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoy it. And he is a really good instructor. I mean, he put the experimental film things together, and yeah, he was very thorough. You know, I'm kind of disorganized. I'm dyslexic and all of that. So, you know, the way that he synthesized that into a syllabus and everything, you know, totally amazed me. Anyway, anybody?
I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. The first thing I want to say is encourage everyone to please make a donation to Area 31 before you leave tonight. Environments like Area 31 are incredibly important. I think a lot of what we did with Blue Elephant from 1998 on, you know, this idea of supporting your local artist and you know, creating a vibrant community around certain environments. Frederick has always been really great for that. I love Frederick. Of all the downtowns and all the communities I've ever experienced, Frederick has always remained one of my favorites, and it's a model for how many other communities should be. But without your guys' support, spaces like Area 31 can't really make it. But what Area 31 is doing has a long and rich tradition in this country. Some of the most important art environments that are dedicated to independent film, truly independent film, are Anthology Film Archives in New York City and Canyon Cinema Cooperative. Now, I'm going to start. I want to talk a little about the success with Trailer Trash. This is my Rosebud Award. You're going to clean it up. Now, to put this, I don't really need this mic. Can you hear me okay? This trophy is that kid in school that didn't even get the participation trophy. I remember when I was on swim team, they would stick 3 of us. I would always get the bronze medal, you know what I'm saying? I was always third and I was always last. So I didn't, when I made Trailer Trash, I didn't anticipate the success that we would get with it. I didn't anticipate all the screenings that we would get. All I hoped for was to make a film that was strong enough to make it into a reputable film festival. If I could have just done that, I would have been happy. I was teaching at Shepherd when I started making Trailer Trash. I had been asked after my last review in the Washington Post, and in my book I've got that review. For a guy like me to get reviewed in the Washington Post, I remember sitting with Michael O'Sullivan over at the Tapas restaurant, the Spanish restaurant, having an incredible conversation with him. And Craig, we were talking about Tentatively a Convenience. This crazy artist I'd gotten to meet in Baltimore, what's part of what's called the Fluxus. I saw Tent 10 years ago in Pittsburgh when Trailer Trash screened there, but Michael knew him. He knew of his work, so we're engaged in this, you know, incredible conversation about avant-garde. And I turned to him and I said, Michael, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to be here. He goes, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm just some kid from a trailer park in West Virginia. I'm not supposed to be sitting here with the art critic of the Washington Post discussing the avant-garde with you. This isn't supposed to happen. This isn't supposed to be my life. But fortunately, for whatever reason, it became my life. I love the avant-garde. I've loved the avant-garde since I was first introduced to punk rock music back when Craig Stang was a crazy young radical, played at the old 80s shows. I love old punk. I've always been a fan of hardcore punk and the do-it-yourself scene, but I didn't have a lot of knowledge and understanding of the other environments that existed, you know, the other movements that existed that were considered underground. When I went to Baltimore in 1993, I was lucky enough to get into the UMBC film program. I literally bogarted my way into Film 101 where I met Craig. We had an amazing professor. His name was Alan Price. And that one professor and that one class, it changed my life, changed my understanding of art, and it expanded
from a small world to a much larger universe. And one of the earliest films he screened in the class was a film from, I think, 63 or 64, Mothlight. 63, Stan Brackage's Mothlight. Mothlight is an incredible film. It's only a few minutes long, maybe 3 minutes, but it was the first time I'd ever seen what is called direct film. And direct film are films made without a camera. I had no clue that things like this even existed inside of art and cinema. So being introduced to Brackage changed the way I saw art. It changed every way I looked at medium, and art that had once not been accessible to me became accessible. So that was, part of the journey. Also with the UMBC film program, and for people that are not familiar with avant-garde film, or what I like to call underground film, UMBC had been founded by a guy named, UMBC's film program had been founded by a guy named Stan Vanderbeek. And in his day, he was a titan of the underground film world. And thanks to that class and people like Craig, I got introduced even more to underground film and started studying the ones that are looked upon in the academic world. So I have books like Art Cinema, The History of Canyon Cinema Co-op. I have a couple of books on older American avant-garde film that starts with Maya Deren, who's considered the first American independent media maker. So those kind of things began to shape and change my understanding of what cinema and art were. So by the time I finally had the opportunity to really make a film, and by that time I'd been teaching at Shepherd for 2 years, and I'm thinking, damn, man, I'm teaching and I've never made anything, like anything of any real substance for me. So I wanted to really make something that was unique. I didn't know what I was going to do. So on the day we found out that my grandmother was ill, I borrowed a Canon 512 and I shot a single roll of Kodachrome 40. And that was kind of the genesis of what became Trailer Trash, a film journal. And at first I thought I was just going to make a film about the death of my grandmother and the birth of my daughter, but it would become much more. So I'll leave those subjects that are contained in the film to after our program. We'll talk about life. So for now, I want to talk a little bit more about underground cinema and its importance to mainstream cinema. You can hear the term underground cinema, but it means nothing unless you can feel it concrete and tangible in the aesthetics that we see today. So I thought, how can I illustrate to everyone the importance of this very vibrant and diverse art world? So I'm going to start with a little talk about the filmmaker that most filmmakers have never, ever heard of. I always like that. I'm a filmmaker, and I get to talk to other filmmakers that have never heard of this guy. Okay, this guy, his name is Lenny Lipton. Lenny Lipton, how many saw Avatar? Avatar. How many have seen a 3D film in your local cinema since Avatar? 3D films. Lenny Lipton is the Chief Technology Officer and primary owner and operator of the company called Real D. All the 3D projection systems that are in all the cinemas around the country are Real D 3D projection. This guy has an amazing history as an underground filmmaker. He's had the greatest influence, and most people have never even heard his name. He also designed the cameras that went to the Mars in the 90s, and you would see the 3D images. I think they were in National Geographic. So that's Lenny Lipton on the cover of Super 8 Filmmaker, but this is Lenny Lipton too. These are some of the books that he published. He was an incredibly technical guy, and most filmmakers of my generation have seen, read, or used his books. This book, let me set this down. Independent filmmaking was the standard text in most film programs all around this country for more than 20 years. He has all kinds of different underground filmmakers in here, different names and all that. So every filmmaker that's going through a film program is being influenced by Lenny Lipton. Lenny Lipton is crucial in the early days of Canyon Cinema Co-op, and he's crucial in the early days of Anthology Film Archives in the forming of these two great art institutions that remain to this very day. Anthology Film Archives, their creative director is a man named Jonas Mekas. He's 94 years old. In the late 50s, he started what was called the New York City Filmmakers Cooperative. It grew into Anthology Film Archives. It's one of the few environments that keeps and archives independent, small, short, independent films so other people can view them. You can rent from Anthology, you can rent from Canyon Cinema. When I taught at Shepherd, I would have my students rent films from Canyon Cinema and present them as a midterm project. Kind of like it was, for me, a way to see films I'd never seen before, you know. I ain't gonna lie. It was a way I could say, I want you to present this film or this filmmaker, and that way I could see some of their films. So, the one thing I want to say about Trailer Trash before we take a brief intermission and we're going to screen the film and we're going to do a podcast with my sisters and we'll talk about the content of the film. When I started as an undergraduate student at Shepherd during the controversial punk rock years when I knew Craig Stang, I had this idea that if I could make a piece of artwork that would make it all the way to New York City and it's on its own strength and validity, and if it would be accepted into a prestigious art environment, then all these years of being an artist would have been worthwhile, that they would have meant something. And I did that. In 2008, Trailer Trash, a film journal, screened at Anthology Film Archives as part of New Filmmakers, which is the longest continuous running film series in this country. So to be part of that cinema history, to be part of that environment, that meant everything to me. I went to Anthology, I got to stand on stage, and I got to speak, I got to present my piece of art, and it was very fulfilling. We screened Trailer Trash, screened literally all around the world. I mean, we screened in Sydney, Australia, in a program at the Sydney Underground Film and Video Festival, in a program put on by John Waters, the director from Baltimore. We won Best Documentary at 2007 at Rosebud. So tonight, we're going to actually see the earliest cut of the film. This is the 2007 cut. The cut that we have on YouTube is from 2008. It's the one that screened at Anthology Film Archives. So I hope you guys enjoy the film. I want everyone to stick around for the podcast. And please buy one of my books. I put them together. I have a Steve Blickenstaff image in there that he did for us in 1995 for the workshops that Craig and I taught at the Delaplane, and I also have 2 prints from my days with Blue Elephant Art Center. I had a lot of fun making my book. One guy posted on Amazon that it is, quote, bizarrely written, and he wouldn't spend $1 for it at a yard sale. Now, at the time I read this, right, I was in a real bad place in my mental health, so it caused me a great deal of anxiety for about 3 days. And I thought about, what am I going to do? Is I take it down or whatever? Then I was like, I call it my divorce book. So, yep, that's right. It was bizarrely written. I wrote this through, my divorce and a really horrible time in my life. But I had a lot of fun with creating the book. It points you in a great direction, not only for Super 8, but there's a lot of obscure filmmakers in that book. People with deep passions and whose work has had, incredible influence on mainstream cinema. I want to besides Lenny Lipton, I want to mention one other figure that is now a mainstream person, a mainstream filmmaker. His name is Todd Phillips. And when I mentioned to my friend Nick Antonetti that Craig had met Todd, and we had arranged to have one of his films screened in Baltimore, 1993 was when you were in the New York Underground, 93. We screened Todd Phillips' Hated, G.G. Allen and the Murder Junkies. We did a special screening with a documentary called Chicken Hawk, which was all about NAMLA, the North American Man-Boy Love Association. It was a great fucking documentary. I saw Zoo. I sat and watched a crazy documentary with John Waters. You were there too when we watched Zoo with John Waters. I'll say a couple of things as an artist before I get off the stage. I've never been one to tolerate censorship. I hate censorship. And in cinema, in our very first film class with Alan Price, the words that he shared, he said, cinema is the willful suspension of disbelief. The willful suspension of disbelief. And isn't that art? The willful suspension, it's not real. You know, the willful suspension of disbelief. So why censor anything? It always should be to the audience to judge whether or not something is too much or if they don't want to see a screen. And you'll know, if Quentin Tarantino's your thing or not. Leave it up to the viewer. Censorship is something that vehemently against. I believe an artist has the right to put all that out there. And with Trailer Trash, I knew the underground film world. And I knew that I couldn't back away from whatever was going on with the story. I knew I had to have the guts to film it. And it was strange, like shooting this film and working on this film through this difficult period in my life. The camera very much had become this buffer between me and reality. And when that camera was no longer there, everything in my life that was going on, I'm just left in a quiet room with it. And it was pretty overwhelming. Some of we'll talk about that stuff after the film. So I hope you guys enjoy this program. I want to thank everyone for coming out and take a little 5 minutes, stretch your legs, get a drink, and then we're going to screen the film and do this podcast. Got any questions? And don't feel free to look at my cool shit I humped over here, but now my life is this blue collar life. It's strange to come back and talk about the things that drove me as an artist that were so important to me. But I want to say that those things are what have helped me to survive to this day. That art has enriched my life. It has made me strong. It has helped me to survive the hardships that I've faced. If I had not discovered art, if I had not discovered that I could have a voice in art, I don't know who I would have became. But I was fortunate enough to meet some of the right people at the right time to be able to have a great career, to do Blue Elephant for the years that we did Blue Elephant. Leading up to Blue Elephant, there was always a really interesting Frederick scene. I've been connected to Frederick since 88, 89. Back in the 80s, I had met a bunch of the crazy punk rock bands. We would do shows at Shepherd. I got drummed up in some crazy little Satan controversy. I got the articles here. I was always proud of that, that Satan controversy, because I didn't know if anything was ever going to top that. And thank God the film did, you know what I'm saying? Like, my 15 minutes of fame spent back in like 89, 1990. But so I hope you guys enjoy this program. Again, I appreciate everyone coming out. Buy a book, donate to Area 31. Stretch your legs for 5 minutes.
Hard to watch after all these years.
Yeah.
It really was. You don't forget anything, but it was hard to watch.
Nick, are we recording? The first question that I have, Don, is when I met you during the time that you were filming it, you were writing for Super 8 magazine, and you got me a job, and I wrote a couple of articles, and we had known each other for a while, through Maria and Sixta and everything. Our families are connected, and through Keith. And the question that I want to ask is, why black and white? Why Super 8 film? Why did you decide to film the journal with that?
First, I want to say, and I forgot to say this at the beginning, I really have to pay homage to Ben Towson and David Wonger, who are not in attendance tonight. I was hoping that Ben would make it. Ben did all the music and the sound for the film. And we worked on it for about a year, editing it. David Wonger, the film belongs as much to him as it does to me. When we got to the editing part, I turned to David, and we had both fell in love with a film called Grizzly Man by Werner Herzog. And I said to him, I said, Dave, I got ate by the grizzly. You know, I give you 100% creative control on what you do with the editing. I won't reverse any choices you make. I won't, I'll step out and I trust you. And David always said that he would have edited a different film if it was his film, but he understood what I wanted, and he helped me to realize that vision. David's gone on to have a fantastic career. His webpage is mambafever.com for all you filmmakers who might be interested. He's also from Martinsburg, but again, the film belongs as much to him, and Ben put an incredible amount of energy into it. But for me, the use of Super 8 and the black and white and stuff was just, it was intimate. And, today with the media, it's hard to think of hand holding a camera as being radical. But in, mainstream cinema, that can be looked at as just, that it was uncouth. That idea has evolved over, especially with the cameras that younger generations of filmmakers are using, because they're so light. And it makes sense to handhold, and it makes sense to handhold with Super 8. But Super 8 allowed me a lot of intimacy, especially with my grandmother when she was sick and dying. It was easy to work with. The cameras are small. I've always loved black and white. I like the contrast between the two mediums. And I shot everything. I shot black and white. I shot every film stock that was available to me, but aesthetically I thought it really worked.
The next question is, during the filming, you watched this transformation of your grandmother, you, Sixto Maria, the whole family, this evolution that you're going through in this journey, and now it's 10 years later, and I would like to ask, has the pain lessened? We talked about that to some degree the other night, and is there a different perspective? Is healing taking place?
For me, some healing has taken place. A lot of healing has actually taken place. The pain, I don't know if it's lessened. You kind of learn to just kind of tuck it in, and you try to be graceful with that pain. But I feel like I've have a lot of healing with this and through this.
Sixto, you shared the other day when we met about you in your car and how you would pull over. Would you share that? That was so poignant, and I could see it as you expressed that.
And I think you might be able to see a little bit of that in the film. And this probably happened maybe for the first year. As you heard, our grandfather was put in a budget rental truck, and what people don't know is that the Sunday that Tookie came to see my grandmother, our grandfather's body was parked probably 5 feet away from my grandmother's bed. So and you have all of that. And I because I didn't hear the words that I wanted to with Tookie, and you imagine all these things, this beautiful family, what has happened. And if a budget rental truck passed me, I would pull over to the side of the road, and I would absolutely lose my mind. And I would scream to the top of my lungs. And my car, I still have that car. I beat the shit out of it. And it was just at that moment, and I know it sounds insane and silly, but at that moment, I had to release that anger at that very moment. And I would cry hard. I would scream. But I had other ways to release That was, and to this day, if I see a budget rental truck, I have a very difficult time, when I see that. When I would go see Maria at the beach, she lived at the beach, and the water is very healing to me in general. I would go, because I would love to go off season, I would go, into the ocean, and I would scream to the top of my lungs. I mean, scream, where I had slobber hanging down to my feet, and during those moments, those moments of anger and just everything you're going through, at the end there's a sense of calm, and I'm processing, so I still hold anger. I just learn to deal with it differently, and I hold anger for different things, with all of this. But yeah, I'm a physical gal, and for me, hitting something was released. It helped, release that pain for me.
Through this, I've gained, watching the family and being with y'all, to be a part of your mother's service, funeral service, going home service, and then your grandmother's service. And watching the family deal with these losses, and then the loss of your grandfather, you wonder, because in my mind, I was ready just to shut myself off and just abandon everything, just like try to weather this out and figure out what was going on. Was there ever a temptation in your life to shut yourself away from each other, or did it draw you closer with the lines of communication? Was that part of the healing, being able to talk about it? Neil?
Well, no, we definitely communicated. I don't think we ever shut each other out.
Right.
It definitely brought us closer.
Yeah,
We were in different states, but no, it definitely brought
I've
us
always been incredibly close to Sixth and Maria, but the thing I'll share is after I made the film, I started having problems in my marriage, and I went through a divorce in 2009, and after that divorce in 2010, I was separated from my children. I haven't seen my daughters, and that experience is what broke me. It's what put me into hiding. It's what isolated me. It's one of the greatest pains I've ever endured, and I was hurting deeply from everything that's inside of the film. So to have someone so close to me hurt me even more, that was one of the things that was so shocking to me, that if we're not getting along or whatever, let's just go our own separate ways. Why do more damage? And that's the thing with the film, and I think we had discussed in an earlier podcast, as I see it as a cautionary tale, but the ability to recognize the impact that we have on other human beings for both positive and good, So.
Maria, you're the shy one.
I'm definitely the closed book.
The closed, yes.
Yeah.
Share with us whatever's on your heart right now.
I'm not good at sharing,
Not
but I
good at
read something today that really touched home for me, especially before coming here tonight, and it was a biography from a lady who was part of the Nazi prison camps, and she survived it, and she's now a psychologist, and she's like in her 90s. But her quote was, we all, pain and suffering is universal, but victimhood is optional. And I loved that, because
Wow.
it's how I just felt that's how I felt, how I feel with anything that you go through that's hard.
Yes.
So, and I'm kind of the person that I kind of just quiet about things. I have certain people in my life, you and Tony over here, I probably talk a lot about things in private, but a lot of people, if they haven't seen the film, a lot of people don't even know I went through that. And my son is actually what got me through
Yes.
being a mother. I was the mother at a right time because I needed him, because I felt if I didn't have Alexander, there were times where I felt like I could just go to a very bad place. And truly, I just feel like he saved my life a couple times.
Wow.
So.
I hear you. Sixta, do you have anything? Just just organically, what's on your heart right now?
What's on my heart? I feel healthier today,
Yeah.
Than I did, of course, back then. I'm a very, very empathetic creature, but this is, to go through this, of course it made me stronger, but I just feel like to come out of it the way I did, it made me a better person, because you have to come out of it better. You have to, and I like what you just said about, the quote, I don't walk around like I'm a victim. Poor us in our family. I do walk with my head high. I'm a very open book. Maria has a little saying. She says, Sixta, you would talk to a turd on the street, it would talk back to you. So I worked with teenagers for many, many years, teenage girls, and with this experience, and even before that, but with this experience, it gave me even more to give to my girls, and it made me a better person, to work with my girls. And I mean, even before this happened, I was good, but just, I just feel like I came out stronger. And today I by nature I feel happy. I walk around smiling a lot. And I'll talk to anybody, and I love talking to people. So this didn't close me down. I have a wonderful man in my life. I'm engaged to get married.
Congratulations.
He's a huge part of my life, and I have him to talk to if I need to.
Yes.
And of course Maria and Dee, and I feel just as close to them now as even before all this. The closest that we have has to me always been
Remarkably close family. Tookie was just home.
She was just home.
What was that like?
It was wonderful.
I mean, in this version of the film, as opposed to the one on YouTube, we have the film on YouTube, which is about a year later, with some more information. But with this version, the earliest version, it kind of leaves you hanging. She pled guilty to second degree, and you said she served, is it
11 years?
11 years.
She served 11 years.
And she got out. She's been out now for how long?
Going 2 years, 2 years, it's been 2 years now, September something was 2 years.
And I saw her for the first time a couple of weeks ago. We had one phone conversation before that, pretty heavy, lots of tears. And then I saw her for the first time. Maria had arranged the meeting, and the deepest hug I'd ever had, just surface talk, and the details, no longer matter, nothing changes what had happened. I just, for her and for all of my family, friends, or whatever, you just always want the best. You want them to make the right decisions.
We never talked about it.
No, and forgiveness is such a huge
Correct.
thing. A lot of people don't know how to forgive. And, there's different, I think, ways of forgiving, but I think if you, can learn to forgive, it's just an amazing thing to do, is to be able to forgive. You can move on when you forgive. And you can, you can truly, look forward when you forgive,
The one thing, the one thing, is I can see when people are fucking up, and I live in Martinsburg, which is a fucked up town with a lot of people fucking up, and just walking down the street, you're 1 block away from this, and I guess that's the one thing, is it's made me a lot more cautious. And I'm definitely, I've become now much more emotionally unavailable than I was when I was younger. I used to work in mental health. I worked at Frederick Memorial Hospital in their psychiatric unit. I was program director for community living. I could never think about doing that kind of work again. I don't have that patience. I don't have that skill, and I don't have the tolerance that I once had for wayward people. So because you realize the consequences of what can happen.
So this film was finished in 2007.
This one's 2007.
So I talked to Sixta, 2 nights ago about, I just wanted to kind of just add that my little sister's daughter, the girl at the end, Christina, what was it, 2 years after my grandmother died, she almost lost her life. And just things just continue. But she was at one of these homes that she was in for troubled girls, and her and another girlfriend found a staff member who had a bottle of pills in her pocketbook.
She was a nurse who
Methadone.
was, it was a nurse who was a recovering addict, and this nurse actually brought her pills and her pocketbook
They didn't know it
into
was
the job.
methadone, though.
Right, and these kids had no idea.
So they literally split the bottle in half and started taking these pills and feeling good. And next thing you know, the next morning, they found Christina and Kat both foaming at the mouth.
Comatose.
And Kat died. The little girl that did it with her died, and Christina was in a coma for some time. So, still, it's just like, it just seems like there was a,
And she's disabled,
yeah,
Christina's
she's permanently disabled now because of what
is
she
disabled.
survived.
This story is about like a micro, small, or family. But the macro, here we talk about the heroin epidemic, the opioid epidemic, and they talk like this thing is new.
Right, no.
It's not new. This film, we're making this in 2004, and so much of that opiate problem that we have in our country, it traces to the medical industry. It's medical doctors, and having worked hard to work in a hospital and to work in a medical environment, just the degree of respect I've lost for the medical environment, it doesn't make a fuck to me if you tell me you're a doctor today. It does not mean anything to me. And there was once a day that I held the psychiatrists that I work with, the medical establishment, I held them in such high esteem. But to watch them just profit off this, and to watch all the pharmaceutical companies that have produced the death and destruction that has raped across America. It touched our family, it touches many families. I mean, Berkeley County sets the record in opiate overdoses in the Panhandle, So what happened in our family has affected many, many families all around the country.
Don, in the making of the film a little while ago, you said that this is who you are now. So there was a death in that sense too, an emptying of oneself on the playing
Absolutely,
field,
and I
on
watched
stage.
Craig Stang's good friend Don Diego Ramirez die, and let me tell you, it was not a pretty sight. The Voodoo Love Gods would have loved it, though. I was hoping Andy Roth would make it over here tonight. It was hard when that part had to come to an end, that creative part. That has always been part of my life, making art. I hope someday to return to that. But there was something, when I was at my lowest, I did some really good work. I was really happy with what I was producing. And I call it like the kind of Gravity's rainbow phase, where it's just this fucking deep psychological. And I'm thinking to myself, if I don't get the fuck out of here, I'm never getting out of here.
You mean as far as
The darkness and this bad place in my mind, in my life, and I remember saying to you at one point, I had to get the bleeding to stop, So putting art aside for now was what I needed to do. I needed to put that down to be able to regain some degree of stability psychologically. And as an artist, stability has always been important to me. It was always something I had in my life in the creative process. I always had a white middle class life. I worked good jobs. I made money. I had health insurance, I lost all of that in 2010, and I was as poor in 2011, 12. I was as poor then as I was as a kid, and it was a harsh reality. I lost my house that you see in the film. I lost it in the Great Recession. I lost my career. I lost a brand new car. I lost everything. But there was something cleansing about that. Like, now my life is very simple. The things that are important to me are very simplistic. I remember talking to Becky and saying this is like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know, I can't worry about transcendence when I've got to pay my rent and, you know, I don't have a job or whatever.
But for me, you're already transcendent.
Yeah, that's,
you are.
That's the bad part.
You are. And I believe, because I've seen your artwork, and I've asked you at different times, I do performance poetry, if you will display your stuff in the venues that I'm at, and you would get mad at me, angry.
Not.
And so I'm going to ask you now, Don, do you think this is a resurrection of the beginning?
No, you know, I mean, I like.
Don Diego.
I definitely would love to do some stuff with Sam and some workshops and stuff like that. But I gotta finish painting a house in Berkeley Springs, you know.
Don and I went through a divorce around about the same time, and I moved into an apartment building where he lived. And he came down to visit me one time. The only thing I had in my apartment was a mattress. So 2 days later, he comes down. He had gotten a new couch, and he drags it into my apartment. Here's some furniture, you know. And so that was the beginning of my resurrection. You know, all the pain and everything.
Absolutely.
So you've been important in that. And Maria and Sixta, because I always had a safe place, Henry, when I would, his name's Henry? Andy. And no.
Tony.
Tony. It was always a safe place when I went to visit them. Me and my daughter and Alexander, you know, all of us could talk and drink a beer by the fire. And I have so much that I owe to this family, to where I'm at now, and to see you rising up, it means a lot to me. Displaying your shit again. So I wanted to share that.
Don't worry, I won't make a habit of it.
Is there anything you'd like to say?
You guys want to do any questions? Anything,
audience?
And then we'll call it a night.
I have one question.
Shoot.
How did you guys feel about him making a movie about your family?
Great question.
Yeah, we had mixed feelings about it. There were times where I was upset, and then I would have to say, this is my artist brother. This is not, you know, I had to look at that side of it. But sometimes it was personal, and just it was just hard.
I didn't make it easy for him either. I think he sometimes had a difficult time approaching me, you know, to ask me to do certain things. I actually was a little angry at first, you know. I was angry, and I let Dee know that, you know, and I actually talked to my grandmother, and my grandmother is who made me feel, you know, first of all, accept this as, you know, my brother's art. And for my grandmother to say, I gave him permission to do whatever he wants to do, I was like, okay, you know. So, but as you can see in that film, I really never loosen up, you know, because everything is so fresh on the mind. And I think what was careful for me is I did not let my anger, you know, show through, not because he was making a film, but, you know, just while interviewing, reading that letter and, you know, all that stuff, you know. So I try to be graceful as I could, but in the end, I'm proud that he did that, and just that he opened, you know, himself up. You know, he opened himself up more than he opened anything up than she and I. Yeah. You know, so but in the end, I'm glad he did it. But it was not easy. Yeah. You know, I was a bull. Now we would be on the phone back and forth. Okay, now Dee wants to do this, or Dee wants to do that. Yeah. How do you feel about it? I'm like, okay, we're just going to do it. Right? It's Dee. We're just going to do it. This, you know. Yeah, we Grandma says it's okay. We're going to do it. Right. So. Right. So we had a lot of, you know, twin moments going. Yeah. So, but we supported it. We supported it. We support it now. And he's good at what he does. He's great at what he does as far as. You know, wanting to share this with everybody, you know.
Yeah, it was hard.
I don't have to do this again for another 10 years.
You know, right?
Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you guys for coming tonight.
Thank you.
I'm just going to piggyback on the question of that.
shoot. So continuing from that, well, bravo, by the way, because I don't know if I've ever seen a film that's that personal, and I was really touched by it. It was very intense and very revealing and open. You as a filmmaker, I've had to shoot some stuff that I thought was kind of, I questioned before I shot it because I was like, is this really something that I should capture? Some of it's been like, mercy killings of animals and stuff, but I was using it for other things, and I just want to know, like, when you were shooting your grandmother dying and stuff, what were your thoughts when you were behind the camera? Was there something immortalizing about film for you, or what do you think when?
Well, the one thing when I looked at this film, I didn't see the nude sequence that's in the trailer where she's nude. I think we used that in the 2008 film, the one that's on YouTube. There's a scene where I shot my grandmother pretty much nude. She's in a Depends, and I wanted to show the ravages of the disease and what it had done to her. I talked to her about it, and when I was a young artist, I'd kid her and told her I wanted her to do nudes for me. I forget the name of the photographer. There was a photographer that did a series called Chicken Soup, which is his mother nude fixing chicken soup. And ever since then, I had it in my mind I wanted to do a nude of my grandmother. I don't know, like shooting the death sequence, I just shot it, not knowing what I would do with it. But I shared with Earl, I shared with Earl and Sixer, we did a podcast with a friend of ours to get ready for this. But all of it's done analog, right? All of my audio in that sequence, it was just a cassette recorder. So I had to go back in the cassettes to find the moment that she died. And I remember listening to the cassettes riding home from work, and it bringing tears to me, and finding that was kind of hard. But, as a filmmaker, as an artist, I thought it was important that I put you in the room. That's it. I wanted you there with me. Anything else? Shoot.
Have you guys ever been back to where you guys grew up?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I live in Berkeley County, but that's a good question because I've only been back to my house one time. One time I stopped in to see our neighbors, and our neighbors were fantastic people. They loved my grandmother. We lived there for almost 10 years, and I tried to keep the house even after my divorce, but I felt so haunted there. It was hard to be there without Sixta, without my grandmother, without my family. So at a certain point, I wanted to let the house go. Like I had to leave it to move on. And there is nothing in my life that's in that film today. Nothing. My friends, that's it. But there's, I have no connection. It's like looking at a past life, and I do believe it was because the pain, you know what I mean? Like at a certain point, you're like, I got to get off this. I got to get, So I just kind of walked away from everything. I left Jefferson County, and it's 10 minutes away. It's like when I go visit my friend Christopher and his family, it's like going to another planet, just to go through Jefferson County where I grew up. Let alone coming over here. This is still like Oz, Frederick is amazing. Love this town.
Through all of this, one last question, and a simple sentence, each one of you. What have you learned through this?
I'll let them go first.
What have you learned? What have you experienced? What have you received?
Okay, well, I guess I'll go first. What I've learned, first of all, you learn who your friends are when you go through
my
something
gosh,
like this.
amen.
You do. You learn. People. The people say I love you. And they use it so loosely. But you learn who truly loves you. But what was the question?
What have you learned through
Oh.
all of this?
Yeah,
You were
what you
answering
learned.
it.
I know, right?
What do you
Right.
see?
So,
Yeah.
I don't know what
If
I.
you would share with someone you know, that just from your heart, someone that's experiencing.
I'll say mine.
loss and
I'll
pain.
say mine. I'll see if they get time to get their.
Yeah, you go on with it, Don.
All life matters. You live life to the very end of it.
Amen. It's true.
The goal is to die like my grandmother did, and surrounded by people that love you and cherish you and want to be with you at the very end. So every breath is precious. You know, the pain that you have in life, it lets you know what joy is, what pleasure is, the sorrows that you have in life. You don't have sorrow without love, you know. So all of that they all work together. There's all meaning, but you know, all life has value. You know, we're collective humanity. You know, we're all part of the same thing. And to live in an age where life has become so valueless that someone would go and shoot out of a window of a motel and shoot 600 people, you know, that these kind of things, how that became part of our culture, I don't understand. You know, when I was young and the crack epidemic was hitting and the murder rates were going skyrocketing in the 80s and in the black communities and, you know, urban communities, and now to see that same kind of thing like everywhere, I just, you know, life matters, life is valuable, and to find the passions that drive you and to allow them to dictate your life, like art, music, you know, physics, whatever your thing is, let that be what builds you, you know, and build others. Don't tear people down, but encourage and build. Petty rivalries mean nothing when you're on your deathbed.
Right. So I think one thing I've learned, and I'm not going to make this long, is just the true power of how drugs can alter someone's mind and, you know, their behavior and make them who, you know, they may not be. And the last thing that I will say is that I'm a very kind person. I'm kind to anybody who crosses my path, because you never know what that person's going through. You know, I used to be the type of person that if someone treated me wrong at a grocery store, like the checkout person, I would lose my mind. I don't do that anymore, and I don't do that because I don't know what that person's going through. And I would hope that, you know, I get the same from other people. I don't know what any of you guys are going through or have been through, or what might make you a little odd, or, you know, respond to something I say, whatever. It's just to always be kind, you know, and if I can help, I'll help. You know, I do extend myself, you know, just be good.
Maria, what'd you learn?
Well, you know, you go through so many different things. I mean, if one thing I can say is, you know, is anybody, any human who goes through pain, is that time does make it easier. When you feel like you're in such despair where you just want to die and kill yourself, and thank God I had my son at some point in time, because I really had a hard time. I wasn't living in West Virginia. I was living without my family in Delaware and had a very unsupportive piece of shit husband at the time. Excuse me, I did. So I had no support. And so at least you guys were closer. So I did, I mean, and all I had was me and my little son. So I had no one to turn to. And I just felt like at some point in time, I just didn't even want to, I was so hurt, and I didn't have anywhere to put it. I didn't have anybody to hold me. I didn't have anybody to hug me. You know, Alexander, who hugged me because I was his mommy, you know, so, but that is something that I'm just so glad that he was in my life, and that, you know, that I do try to tell people after going through that, and sometimes I feel very shallow saying it, but time is going to make it a little easier. It will make it a little easier if you can just, you know, just get past that first wave of pain, which can last for years. And just real quick, speaking of friendship, he has been amazing in our healing.
Yes.
He has been
absolutely amazing with our healing process.
He has.
You know, he's a beautiful piece of our lives before and after.
Now, this
you know,
man
and will
came
always
into my
will
life.
be.
What year was it, Earl? 1991, right, too?
1991, yeah.
This guy, he was working for the prisons or something.
The juvenile detention center.
Right, and there he is sitting, and he had one, I think, a pediatric patient with him or something.
Yes, yeah.
And we just started talking and,
Yeah.
and sparked this conveation, and it's been crazy ever since.
Beautiful spirits,
Beautiful
keep them in
crazy.
your life. Beautiful people, keep them in your life.
Yeah, since
It's easy to love
1990.
you all, and
Thank you.
It has been an adventure. It really has. Any more questions? Anybody?
Thank everyone for
Thank
coming
you.
tonight. Donate to Area 31.
We do want to thank Area 31. Sam.
Yes.
Thank you, thank you.
And a quick round of applause for Nick and today. While everyone's getting up, I'll tell a story with Nick and Christina, right? I'm doing a remodel for them. I did a frame-to-frame finish of this attic, right? That's a beautiful room now, and I convinced them to let me paint this rock wall, but when I'm trying to sell the idea to them, Nick is looking at me like I'm half crazy. I'm like, Nick, I know what I'm talking about. I can do something really special here. Just give me a little creative.
This is 3 days removed from the satanic story he tells me in Shepherdstown. Mind my skepticism at the time.
I'm fixing this, I'm doing this really neat paint, and this other blue collar guy's with me. And he's looking at me like, I'm smoking that all up. You know what I'm saying? But it came out. I got it on Facebook.